Hello everyone and welcome to another WIS Technology tutorial. Today I'd like to give you an in-depth update regarding my curriculum mapping process using Google Apps tools. So currently we're at that stage where our map is being populated. I have right now our faculty and staff have entered just over 300 units, so I have some nice data to work with, and one of the challenges I've been thinking about for a really long time is how best to track outcomes. We made a choice a couple of years ago to develop some outcomes that are mainly dispositionally based, essentially on the ISTE standards and the library standards, and we sort of let each department wordsmith those outcomes into something that was meaningful for their subject area. So we have these outcomes, and my task was to create an easy way for teachers to attribute these outcomes to individual units. So, for example, here is the Humanities S4 subject area. On the left-hand side, I have a Google form that is basically checkboxes of the outcomes that they had decided upon when we had talked about this. At the top, the very first question is literally a Form Ranger drop-down menu that you basically select the unit you want to attribute the outcomes to. Now, I am eventually going to change the source of this data because I feel it's problematic, especially if the names of the units, which are in essence the names of the Google Docs, if they change, those changes won't be reflected here. So I have another idea for how to get a more sort of current list of documents. I'm going to list the names of the docs in the Google Drive folder rather than grab the names of the unit templates when they were requested. So this piece is going to change. But anyway, you would choose a unit, attribute the outcomes, and then that would plop it into this awesome table. And the reason this is here is so you can go back and perhaps edit the outcomes that you had previously attributed to. So say you were working on imperialism and you needed to go back and change the outcomes for this one. So you could go ahead and do that and resubmit any changes that you would want to make. And those would be reflected. So with that in mind, let's slide over to the reports page. So this is where we can kind of visualize what's happening with this data. So I've just recently added these subject areas along the top. And I need to do this for all the subject areas, but I'm starting with the Humanities in S4. So if I click on this, I get this sort of pie chart report. And this is kind of going to break it up by percentages where we are putting the emphasis on these dispositional outcomes in our units, right? So we're not encouraging everyone just to check every possible box that could apply to a unit. We're really hoping people think about the unit and what does this unit really get at in terms of these dispositional outcomes, so that you may be only checking 2 or 3 of these items per unit. But these pie charts will give us a nice visual of where our biases are. Where do we do most of our emphasis in terms of delivering the units or the content to the students? So the back end, what this looks like, when that Google form is filled out, it's fed into this spreadsheet here. And one of the first things I had to do was add a Google Apps script that would populate here column J with the edit response URL. So that way it would be easy to go back and change your outcomes if needed. As we move along, columns K through basically P, these are needed to assemble items for the awesome table that I had shown you earlier. For example, this is just the image file. If we go back to this outcomes page, you'll notice that this little guy here, that's there because of this particular URL. And then this, of course, is the actual hyperlink to that URL. Now, because these outcomes were in a Google form that was a checkbox question, the first thing I needed to do was separate the responses into their own cells. So I was able to use the split function by a delimiter of 2 characters, because I knew every time I saw a period comma, that meant a new outcome was being listed. I couldn't just leave it as a comma because there were actually commas in the way the outcomes were listed. So I needed something unique, and I knew that the combination period comma only existed once in all of those outcomes. So this allows me to sort of split up all the outcomes across. This is going to be really long in the end, but it was necessary for me to be able to count these properly. So I'm not done doing this, but that's what I'm doing. And then the copy down formula will allow this formula to be attributed to each new outcome submission. So that's that. The awesome table is derived essentially from my Google site from this. This is basically a query. So I only queried the columns that I wanted to use in my awesome table. So this is the link to edit the existing outcomes, and this is a link. This lists the names of the units. And now the actual reports are coming on this sheet, where I am using a COUNTIF function in this range, right? So this is the creativity and innovation outcomes, and it's basically counting every occurrence of these outcomes in this particular range. So that's where those numbers are coming from. And then you can kind of figure out the rest. This is just a simple 3D pie chart that I crafted using these numbers here. And I'll probably also create a pie chart with more of the global settings, with the pie chart containing just information about creativity and innovation, communication and collaboration, so on and so forth. So once these are all set up, these will operate dynamically as the mapping process is taking place. So I'm just trying to stay ahead of the teachers who are busily populating this with data, and I feel like I'm onto something with the tracking and sort of visualizing the outcomes and so on and so forth. So there you have it. This is an update of where I am right now, and thanks for watching. Bye.